Hello, my name is Amanda Pollock, and I am the Visual Information Specialist for the National Park Service's National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom program. Welcome to the third episode of the Ranger Roadshow. The Network to Freedom works with people across the country, both inside and outside of the National Park Service, to preserve and share verifiable Underground Railroad stories. If you've been following along with us on our journey, you'll know that we are in the middle of a virtual road trip across the country. At each stop, we meet a new group of people and learn new stories that the Network to Freedom, our members, and our partners are working to preserve and share. On this episode of the Ranger Roadshow, we are headed to Adkins Arboretum, whose program, A Journey Begins, Nature's Role in the Underground Railroad, has been a Network to Freedom listing since 2014. This means that the program meets professionalism, accuracy, and accessibility standards outlined by the Network to Freedom. Adkins Arboretum is a private nonprofit organization and manages 400 acres of the 4,000 acres of Tuckahoe State Park. Adkins Arboretum's grounds are similar to the landscape that freedom seekers navigated more than 150 years ago. Their program, A Journey Begins, Nature's Role in the Underground Railroad, explores the little-known relationship between nature and the Underground Railroad and interprets the profound connection between landscapes and historic conditions and events. In doing so, it emphasizes the importance of preserving native landscapes throughout the Chesapeake Bay region. Building on A Journey Begins, Nature's Role in the Underground Railroad audio tour, the Arboretum has created a school field trip program and is developing a self-guided on-site field trip for schools. Hands-on activities include foraging wild edibles, practicing the art of concealment among the trees, crossing a stream barefoot, and navigating with the stars. With the funding from a 2020 Network to Freedom Grant Award, Adkins Arboretum has contracted with the Schoolhouse Farmhouse to create a self-guided virtual tour and interpretive storytelling experience. The virtual tour, through a combination of video, articles, audio clips, historical photos, and resource links, will be used in classrooms as a precursor to a trip to the Arboretum, or, for those not within travel distance, as a module that can supplement existing curriculum and lesson plans. Stay tuned for the premiere of this experience in the summer of 2021. Without further ado, let's head to Ridgely, Maryland, where we will meet with Anthony and Damika, two of the program's creators, to learn more about the evolution of this unique program.
Hi, my name is Damika Baker-Wilson, and I am a member of Adkins Arboretum Board of Trustees. I'm also a former staff person and the original project manager for the Nature's Role on the Underground Railroad project.
And I'm Tony Cohen. I am a historian of the Underground Railroad, president of the Monero Foundation, Inc., and one of the partners and interpreters for Nature's Role in the Underground Railroad.
So we're going to just talk a little bit about how this project started and how 15 years later almost we got to this point. So I started here as a staff person, and I grew up about 5 minutes away from this very spot that I didn't know existed, right? I only knew Tuckahoe. And so when I came here as a staff person, immediately the natural landscape, it took me aback. So it was actually this book, Bound for the Promised Land by Kate Clifford Larson, that inspired this entire project. So I just wanted to read the passage that gave us the greatest inspiration. Despite Tubman's success, the enormous obstacles she surmounted in assisting runaways should not be diminished. There was the constant fear of relentless slave catchers who were armed with guns, knives, and whips, and who were hunted with vicious dogs that were trained to attack human beings. Natural barriers were plentiful as well. Many slaves running for freedom along the route through eastern Maryland and Delaware, north into Pennsylvania, or east and north into New Jersey, lacked adequate clothing and shoes. Spiny sweet gum burrs, thorny thickets, the sharp needles of marsh grass, and icy paths in the winter all took their toll on the feet and limbs of struggling runaways. The eastern shore's numerous rivers, streams, and wetlands presented a serious hindrance, particularly to runaways who could not swim. Wet clothing could draw unwanted attention, and cold weather could seriously debilitate drenched and hungry escapees. Sometimes in the most severe weather, the slaves' coarse clothing, made of flax or other rough material, chafed against their skin, causing it to bleed, filling every step toward freedom with pain. So this project started with $1,200, a rack card, and a web page. And over time, it has really evolved into something very substantial. And early on, we brought you on board to lead a tour and to give a lecture. And we realized we couldn't keep you forever, right? And so from that one program, then came an audio tour just to increase the accessibility of the experience and of the tour. Can you talk a little bit about what you did in terms of helping the project grow and evolve?
Yeah, absolutely. I was really excited about the nature's role in the Underground Railroad and the tours and the project. First of all, because Adkins is an arboretum, and it has a mission and a focus. And with this project, the tours we did actually involved guiding people, sometimes by day, sometimes by night, through the Arboretum grounds on a simulated Underground Railroad journey. Now, this wasn't a historical reenactment. There weren't, people, wearing the attire of the time or acting or anything like that. But we were using the landscape, the trees, water, the different elevations of the land, all together to tell a kind of tangible and sensory story that played out in real time. So, people had to cross streams and they had to
dig in the cavities of the trees. I remember doing that. There was like a satchel, I think, that was hidden in the tree. Yes, and I remember that we would have. I think it were kids, right? That we would say, "We'll dig in the tree."
Yes,
it was that's what they would do.
Yeah, I remember the thrill and the terror on the face of one girl as she put her hand into the hollow of a tree. I was just happy that a snake hadn't crawled in there in the time that we had planted the satchel. But that's the idea is to pull history out of books altogether and make it tangible and real. And I think Adkins has served as an ideal backdrop for that kind of experience.
And I think that it's important, and I think that was a really important point, that it was groundbreaking for the time, because the story of African Americans' role in history, right, is always segmented out. It's always this happened and this happened with Black people, but we're part of the bigger story. And I think that this project told that in a way that I don't think has ever been told. And nature is not the player in the Underground Railroad that people immediately think of. And for me it is, because of this experience. It made me think about that story much differently. And it's because history was taken out of the book, right? And that you're put in this place. And I think that that's really important.
Today, we find ourselves at a crossroads. We're 2 decades into the 21st century. Our awareness of our history, I think, has been heightened. In 2020, this past year in particular, with the global pandemic, people have been seeking destinations that are out of doors where they can get fresh air, but they still want the process of thinking and learning and growing. That coupled with the racial awakening that we're having in our country and really globally makes the story of nature and the Underground Railroad critical, actually. And I think also in the natural world, confronting this kind of history and these kind of stories provides a place for healing. as well as contemplation, as well as connection with others, even if you have to stand 6 feet apart.
Yeah. I think that this project sits at a really beautiful crossroads with the humanities, with history, and with the environment. And it is these human ties, right? Like that really connect us. And we had talked about this a little bit, that for me, everything is really rooted in history. And I think that is where you connect with one another. That's how you learn that your stories are more similar than different. And I think that that's where the empathy comes from. That's where the understanding comes from. And who knew that could come from an environmental organization. And so I just think that the project itself is it's a beautiful moment for the awareness of what's going on here to get the needed attention.
And I think it's interesting that at this time in our history, while we're facing so many traumas on a global level, that we can take this story, the story of the quest for freedom, place it here in a place like Adkins Arboretum, and have nature actually nurture us, nurture our history, kind of open our minds and set us on what I hope is our own path to the future.
So thinking about Kate's words, like we are in that space, we are in that, and almost in that moment. Can you tell us like a little bit about what runaways at the time could have been thinking and feeling and experiencing?
Well, it's interesting because you're from here, I'm from the Western Shore, so in a way, every time I cross the bay, it's just feels like a little step back in time, and so I think trying to get into the mindset of someone during that time is actually easier to do here, where the land in many ways remains fairly the same as it was back then. When people escaped, they were, first of all, obviously trying to leave something, to get away from something. It could have been the poor conditions of slavery. It could have been the fear of being sold, the threat of being separated from their family, and striking out was their only hope of being able to keep their family unit together. And so it seems like it would be a frightening, maybe even terrifying journey. But I think we have to keep in mind that people who were enslaved during that time were people who lived off of the land. And they were able to navigate that landscape, and they were able to interpret its many secrets. And so, yes, the journey was long. There were dangers ahead, but they already had a head start because they were able to intuit the landscape.
I think the beauty of this arboretum is that, like you mentioned, the natural landscape is virtually untouched, right? And that you can literally put yourself in their place, and on one of the trails, you can kind of see what they saw. I know for me, when I drive around the Eastern Shore, I do, like, in my head, like, place myself there. Like, can you imagine it being the dead of winter and you have no coat, you have no hat, and then there's 5 other people with you? Like, how do you navigate from place A to place B and make it there in one place? And so I think unlike a museum, right, yeah, where you're taking things that don't belong there, right? Like you're putting things in a place where they don't belong and they're not natural. Here, it's here, right? This place existed long before us. Lord willing, will exist long after us. And I think that the preservation of such spaces is really important to everyone, visitors, and those of us who are from here and continue to stay here and kind of nourish organizations and places like this.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. You talk about how in a museum setting, you bring in objects from the outside to kind of populate the story. Here, the museum is the outdoor, and we as visitors are those objects, moving into and throughout the space. So I think a place like Adkins allows us to see an aspect of the slavery period inside of the landscape, um, but from a new perspective, and also I think a fairly safe and welcoming environment.
Mm-hmm. So this was a great conversation. I haven't seen you since like it's been a long 12
time.
years, right?
Yes.
And so this feels very full circle for me.
Yes.
And so I'm very proud and honored to be here having this conversation with you.
Likewise, and thanks for having me, and thanks for just opening this great project and this great arboretum to the public, and allowing people to join in its unfolding story.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony and Damika, for sharing your program with us today. It's really exciting to see how this program has evolved throughout the years, and we thank you for your dedication to telling this story. For the rest of you, thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch you next time right back here at the Ranger Roadshow.